Many years ago, I was in a boardroom and I was attempting to present, but I was tongue-tied. I literally could not get the words out. My stomach was in my throat and my boss was there. All of my peers were there on the leadership team, and I could not speak because I had an internal conflict with my boss. But I was taught you don't question your boss, so I didn't say anything prior, like months prior, I didn't say anything to her to let her know that I thought that this was not the best thing and da 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 da. And then go back to the boardroom. She shuts down the meeting. It was the right thing to do, but it was mortifying. I was so embarrassed and gosh, it was awful. She pulls me aside after and she said, Karen, once again, you didn't trust your gut. You could have just said, I don't remember why we were talking about this in the first place. And I had this moment where I thought, what? That's exactly what she did, but I didn't think I had permission to do that. Again, I was taught you wait for permission or you get permission. You need to ask for permission. That authority figure needs to tell you what to do because, of course, they know better than you. And boy, I will also tell you that this was not early in my career. I learned a lot from that moment. And that was the day, the actual moment that I decided I've got to figure out why I am so focused on accommodating everybody else. I'm afraid to rock the boat. I am intimidated by my boss. And this was, mind you, I was managing a whole team of people, had traveled all over the world, was speaking on all big stages, and yet in front of certain people, particularly my boss, I could not get the words out. And that is when I set out to change. And it took me quite a long time, but I'm here to tell you that this is something I wanted to share because we've all had moments where we weren't our best selves. We weren't free to be our best selves. And I like to say that I kept myself in a prison of my own making. I could have spoken up. I was a full-fledged adult, but I still had these things that held me back. And that's why I want to help you and 10 million women eradicate self-doubt in their lives and replace that with confident communication. Specifically, what I mean by eradicate is to get to this point where self-doubt does not paralyze you anymore. It does not hold you back from speaking up and saying what you want to say. So in this episode, we are going to talk about 5 tips to command any room. So let's jump in. First thing is to be clear. So often, and some of you that have been following me for a while, you know that I talk about how to stop rambling and get to the point. And as a recovering rambler myself, I definitely understand how challenging it can be to get to the point and stay on point. But what I suggest that you do is you stop, pause to gather your thoughts, and say out loud, my point is this. That will not only help you recalibrate, it will help everybody else around you go, oh, she has a point. Fabulous. We're all on board. There's something about saying it out loud that makes a huge difference. And in the same vein of being clear, making sure that you are not wavering, that you are not waffling. I used to do this a lot because I grew up as a chameleon. I was taught that you make everybody happy. And so how do you say things that make everybody happy? Sometimes if that's your goal, then that actually requires wavering and waffling, but that is not a way to command any room. It's certainly not a way to build a successful career, even though some people can do it when they're compartmentalized in that waffling or wavering. But if we look at the overall, our ability to influence is directly correlated to our ability to be clear, to make sound decisions, and to not waver, especially in the presence of others and people that totally manage the possibility of us getting promoted and moving up in the company. The other thing related to clarity is be careful about getting filler words stuck in your communication. So, any of these words that can get in our way are going to take away from our credibility. And the other thing you want to be mindful of is those diminishing words like kinda, just. I just want to share a little tip with you. versus I want to share a tip with you. Notice how different that is. Eliminating these words, or I maybe want to do this, or I kind of, sort of, blah, blah, blah. It sounds almost silly when you're hearing me say them, especially saying them one after the other, but it's amazing how many people do this in their day-to-day communication, and we don't even realize it. This is why recording yourself is so important. And in fact, this is one of the things that we, excuse me, that we do in the powerhouse. That's my mastermind for high achieving women. I record you and we watch it back and we get feedback and look at what are the things you're doing well? What could you do even better? So that's the first one, be clear. Number 2 is to be succinct. Get to the point and move on. Very similar to being clear, but sometimes people could be clear, but they add a lot of words. And I love the phrase, be brief, be bright, be done. Get to it, move on. You don't need to keep repeating yourself or belaboring the point. I used to do this. I used to repeat myself because somehow I felt like I needed to explain it 3 different ways for somebody to get it. And oftentimes what happens if we do that, we are actually making it seem like we don't think that they can comprehend what we're saying. Now that might not be conscious, but it's definitely something to be mindful of. And more importantly, from the get-go, think about how you can be succinct. And a tip that I will offer you is to think about something numerically. So for example, when I say to you, I've got 5 tips to share with you today, all of a sudden your mind is now mentally ready for those 5 tips to come at you. It's not this laundry list of things. So that being succinct, numerical things can be very helpful. Or, hey, so and so, I've got 3 things to talk with you about today. Or as we're leading, as we start this meeting, there are 3 things that I'd like to cover, whatever it might be. So the more you can add quantifiable numbers, that will help you stay on track. It will also help the people around you stay on track. And don't add extra words when you don't need to. All right, our third one is to be likable. This one sounds so common sense, perhaps, but it's true. People want to do business with those that they know, like, and trust. Likability builds trust, it builds relationships. And one of the ways that you can do this is showing interest in other people, asking questions, as actually keeping notes about people that are in your world, checking in with somebody. Hey, I know you had a birthday a couple weeks ago. How did it go? Or, wow, I remember you talked about your little girl who was in baseball practice. How did that go? Some reference to a past event or something that's going on in their lives. My goodness, that is a great way for people to feel a connection with you and that you care. Another thing related to likability is to find a common thing. We naturally like people who are like us. And a simple thing is geography. Find something of, wow. I mean, I can still remember when I moved to San Francisco from Minneapolis. I had this older couple that had an apartment building, and I really wanted it. This was in the 90s when there was a lineup of people out the door to get apartments in San Francisco. And the wife of the landlord came when I was talking to her, she goes, "You're from Minnesota? I've been to Minnesota." She didn't even live there. She'd probably only been there once. And that, I believe, is what got me that apartment. She was very excited. So when you can make connections that people can relate to, it makes you more likable. The other thing that's really simple is to smile. Add a little lightness to your expression. It doesn't mean that you have to smile from ear to ear all the time. You don't want to look like a clown, but it's simply having a lightness. And you can do this for those of you that struggle with facial expressions, is to simply raise your eyebrows a little bit. That can help you come across with a more open expression. And a good rule of thumb, I know I've said it already, but when you record yourself on video, especially during a meeting, you can get a much better idea of how you come across. And that is gold because half the time we don't realize how we're coming across. So Take note of that. Number 4 is to be assertive. The idea with assertiveness is to state things. We've already talked about clarity, state things clearly and with a smile, and also like you mean it with your voice. So, what I mean by that, the number one thing to show assertiveness right away, the first thing that you can change is your voice. Say it with conviction, put a period at the end of that statement. Imagine if I said what I just said and the difference, put a period at the end of that statement. Notice how different that is. This is a statement is not a time and a place for you to put in question marks or commas. Speak with conviction like you mean it. When you say things nice and crisp with punctuation rather than how the spoken word, often people forget that punctuation exists. So when you can say things in a way that is punctuated like you would when you write an email, where you add in periods and commas where appropriate and exclamation points, that is going to help you come across with so much more credibility and clarity in that assertiveness. A huge part of this is how you show up with your voice. Another part of it is to have a strong handshake. When you are able to meet people in person, put your hand right out with a smile and shake it strong. Don't have one of these weak, limpy handshakes that nobody wants to shake. I'm amazed at how many women have these weak handshakes. And right away, it comes across as if you are passive and just not very strong. So, making sure that you've got a nice, strong handshake is a beautiful way to start off right away, showing your power and your strength related to not only your message, but who you are, your product, your service, whatever it is that you are representing. And all of these things that we're talking about connect to so many other areas. So it is definitely worth it to put in your time and your energy into this. The other thing is to have your shoulders back, sit up straight, stand tall. I remember this was a long time ago now, but I was a little girl and I was probably 12 or 14 years old. And I was with my brother walking through the Target parking lot in Minneapolis. And apparently I was looking down at my shoes. And he said, Karen, the world is out here. He kind of just had me lift my head. He goes, the world is up, not down at your shoes. And I will tell you, boy, how sad that I think about that I was looking down all the time. I was so worried about being seen. So that's obviously a long time ago example, but remembering that you want to look straight out there, shoulders back, you want to show that confidence in your body language as well as your voice. Number 5 is to be aware. You've got to read the room. Be aware of what's happening around you. Be aware of yourself. This is a foundation to emotional intelligence. Are you aware of how you're coming across? Are you reading the room to see, do people look dead? Do they look uninterested? Or are they engaged? Are they asking questions? Are they making eye contact? Are they smiling? Now, sometimes you can't always base how your audience is coming across related to how you're doing, but it is a great time when people look disengaged to go, hey, everybody, let's take a quick moment. Everybody stand up exactly where you are, shake yourselves out a little bit, take a deep breath, and then we'll come back. We are in, we might be going through spreadsheets or something where we might say, this is a lot of intense information, and I can see that on your faces. Now, that might not be appropriate in certain times to say, I can see it on your faces. You always have to have good judgment. That definitely goes along with being aware. But noticing what's happening around you. One of the things that I find with my clients is, especially when we're nervous about preparing or presenting at a meeting, too often what happens is we get so fixated on ourselves, our nervousness, our doubt, our perhaps lack of knowledge around the topic. There could be a variety of things that make us feel less confident. And then what happens is we're so focused on ourselves, we're not even aware of what's going on around us. So, a very easy thing to do is to always start a meeting or a presentation with asking a question of the audience. Or even during the middle of your meeting, hey, how are things going so far? What's landing for you? What's resonating? I want to do more of what's going to help you so that that can be as relevant as possible to you. So lots of ideas around this. Again, let's repeat. We've got the 5 tips to command any room. Number 1 is to be clear. Number 2, be succinct. Number 3, be likable. Number 4, be assertive. Number 5, be aware. If you start with those 5 things, that is going to take you really far. And I know that I'm talking to senior leadership here. You've been there, done that perhaps. And yet these are such good reminders because it never hurts to talk about them, because I continue to see again and again where people mess these things up or they just don't do as well as they could. And I feel like, one of the most challenging things is when I see especially strong women misrepresenting themselves. I remember an example of a woman who I knew was an absolute expert in her field, 20 plus years of experience. And when I heard her speak, she had this hesitancy in her voice. She was even halting a little bit. And I thought, oh my gosh, this is not even like the person I know. And yet this happens to the best of us. This is why I'll say it again, that you want to record yourself. Also, get feedback from people around you. Find out, hey, how did I do in that meeting? How was my posture? Ask for specific feedback, because then you'll get specific feedback that will help you. But if you don't ask for specifics, you're probably just going to get somebody that says, oh, you did fine, or you did a good job. So that is also really important. Now, if you are interested in learning more about my mastermind community, the Powerhouse, we meet twice a month. It is a membership. You also get one-on-one coaching. I would love to talk to you more about that. And there's actually if you don't have it yet, there is a free download on my website called 9 Words to Avoid and What to Say Instead. And if you read that, that is also going to help you tremendously around commanding any room. As a reminder, I have the C2 calls, conversation and connection, every month. And the next one is at the end of October. So you can see that in the show notes as well. And one last thing, I decided to do this flash, flash program that I haven't brought back since a couple of years. And it is a group coaching program called Speak with Confidence. That is a 6-week program starting October 17th. And it's limited to 8 women. So if you're looking for more of a shot in the arm, let's do this thing in 6 weeks, then I can help you there as well. Happy to give more information on that. You are always welcome to book a clarity call with me simply to find out how can I help you. And maybe it isn't even something, again, I want to be clear. I don't want to sell you something you don't need. I want to help you get the support that you need and recommend the right person to you. So on that note, we'll see you next time.